I'm Gwen Preston of Resource Maven, and we're here at the Metals Investor Forum in January in Vancouver. Thanks for coming to Vancouver to spend some time with me.
It's a pleasure to be here again, Gwen. It's great to see you.
So this is Scott Close of EMX Royalty. So let's dive right into it. EMX, generally a very stable performer over these last few sort of sideways, boring, whatever you want to call them, years in the metals market. EMX did have a bit of a share price decline as we got to the end of 2023. And that was related to, I'm going to say, a market's perception of something that happened with one of the owners of your stock. So This is SSR Mining, who owned a chunk of EMX from you having bought a package of royalties from SSR.
That's right.
And SSR decided to divest that holding. So take us through what happened and what you think, how that played out.
Okay, so when we bought the SSR mining portfolio, which had 16 properties in it, some very handsome properties in there, we paid for that it was about half cash and half shares.
Right.
So at the time, our share price was much higher. And so we had a lot of currency in our shares.
Yeah.
So we affected that transaction, like I said, with both cash and shares. And then their board of directors decided they needed to divest themselves of non-core holdings. And our shares were party to that decision. And so they elected to sell those shares right in the depths of tax loss selling season in December, which was very curious timing. But that created a huge buying opportunity for some very smart money out there. So Rick Rule, Adrian Day of Adrian Day Asset Management, and also he manages the Euro-Pacific Gold Fund, and then a very large hedge fund, I believe it's the largest hedge fund, which will go unnamed, in the junior resource sector, came in and bought the bulk of those shares. So the really smart money came in and took advantage of the low prices. This is not only smart money, but very steady holders of shares and bought those shares. So, I think it's an excellent time to come in to establish a position in EMX or to bolster one that you already have. So,
I mean, it's interesting to see. I thought it was interesting to see such a significant market reaction to that news from SSR because at the end of the day, I mean, SSR, what was their long-term game plan with owning EMX? Obviously looking for share appreciation. That's any investor's game, but SSR is a major mining company and major mining companies like to keep their portfolios reasonably constrained. So I get, divesting of non-core assets is a thing that they do. So it seemed like a bit of an outsized response, but like you say, part of it was just timing. Sentiment was sort of tapped in the markets, and I guess there was sort of, therefore people just saw it and worried that it was a sign of weakness.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so moving forward from here, we're looking at a year where we still are very bullish on copper on the medium term because there isn't enough of it and we're not building enough mines and all of that. Gold, I was just talking about how I think gold has a fairly good likelihood of performing more like this year. And those are the those are the two commodities to which EMX has the most exposure, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think, how do you think that works? How does that play out for investors? Like when you're looking at an investor rationale for moving into EMX over the next year, I mean, you've got a lot of gold exposure, but then you also have the copper there.
Right. So, we like to say that gold is money, but the world runs on copper, and those things are definitely true. So, and I think it's a great time to have exposure to both of those commodities. So with the likelihood of rate drops in the U.S. and probably other jurisdictions around the world, we think that gold is a great place to be. We've got a lot of exposure to that through our Leeville royalty on the Carlin trend, and those are exposure to about 4 mines that are operated by Nevada Gold Mines. Yeah. And then there's a significant gold component to our Timok royalty in Serbia. So that's not just a copper mine, but a copper gold mine. So that covers both the commodities. And then we also have Gediktepe
Yes.
in Turkey, which produces a lot of gold too. And that's the bulk of the gold that we're realizing right now. And then on the copper side, obviously we have the exposure at Timok, which is the largest copper gold mine in the history of the European continent.
Yeah.
And then Caserones, which I love to pronounce as Caserones, and Chile, which is operated now by Lundin Mining, who is going to be expanding the resource there and increasing the rate of production there. So the bulk of that is copper, and then there's also a credit for molybdenum there, and that's molybdenum prices have been performing nicely also. So
it's
a
fun
lot of
chatting
good
with
exposure there.
It's fun chatting with you now. Like I've followed EMX for a long time, and even 5 years ago, like when we talked about producing assets, the list was pretty small, and it's not small anymore, and that's exciting. And that means that EMX is now a significant cash producing company, right? This is something that you were working towards for a long time. I mean, this is like ramping up in a significant way, and that is an investment thesis for EMX in and of itself, isn't it?
Yes.
In the royalty space.
Yeah. So in the first 3 quarters of 2023, because we haven't reported the fourth quarter yet, we realized over $30 million US in cash flow. So,
right. Yeah, that's big. A couple of years ago, it was
Yeah.
it was like free cash flow was zero only a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So big difference. Cool. Well, I mean, I'm excited to see what happens with the gold price in general, and then what it might do to help bolster those cash flows for EMX, and to see how those strong shareholders that help suck up those SSR shares, that strong shareholder base really matters when you have a market that's just sort of moving along sideways. If you have a strong base of support, that can really help propel a stock when there's some good news. So may have looked bad on paper, but I think it may play out well in the long run for EMX.